Hi, and welcome back to the Parade Lap. We are going to be chatting about the Belgian Grand Prix today, basically Spa. Sophie, what were your thoughts on it?
The Spa weekend it's always a cool track to watch. I love the onboards, but overall I think the weekend fell a bit flat, a little bit boring. Yeah, it was a good race, but it was a very long race. Quite a lot of battles throughout the field, which was cool. Qualifying was relatively exciting, but overall I just thought it was a meh kind of weekend. It was okay, but I can't really rate it any higher than that. What did you think?
Maybe it's because we had some pretty exciting races. Maybe we came off the back of Silverstone, and that felt quite, lots of interesting things happening there. I thought there were a few moments in this race, where you weren't quite sure how it was going to stack up. Like, I wasn't quite sure, and then maybe towards the end, it kind of just got locked in, and therefore it was a bit boring towards the end. But there was a lot of question marks about, is it going to rain? Are we going to get a wet race finally? Because we haven't seen a wet race with these new cars. And there was clouds, and I think people like feeling to see if rain was coming at the start, but that didn't happen. And then I thought the other interesting thing is that, we've had a lot of upgrades happen over the last few races, and people bringing in new parts and components and all of that. And I think we're starting to see how that's panning out now with everybody, where we initially just had obviously Mercedes dominance by a long mile, but now it looks a bit more mixed and varied with the teams. So yeah, those were kind of my thoughts on it. I'm curious to see what your podium is, given that you thought it was a bit of a meh race. So, what was your P3?
My P3, I was actually quite disappointed when this happened, and I didn't think I would be quite so disappointed by it, but it was that George crashed out and that he was out of the race. I think it just sucks for the championship because, spoiler alert, Kimi won again, and I'm just not excited by that information. I really want George to get some points, and he's just sort of like the closest one that could bring the fight to Kimi. I kind of want just someone to get close to Kimi in terms of the lead that he has. Yeah, so that was my P3, that I was just gutted for George, but overall more gutted for what that means for the lead that Kimi continues to build.
We are in sync because that was also my P3. So I said my P3 was the sort of George versus Lewis racing incident. So that incident, which at least the commentators thought it was an incident when it happened, maybe on lap one also. He got taken out on lap one. I also wasn't sure when he spun off whether he had just gone off and he would rejoin. So I didn't realize. And obviously it's the first lap, so they're very much focused on just continuing to follow the cars at the front. So I wasn't sure if he would rejoin, and I didn't realize that was actually going to be him out of the race fully. And yeah, like you said, I think it had a whole bunch of implications from that, because obviously the championship, so we were super excited when Kimi started winning, because we were like, oh, great, go Kimi. But then we also do want an interesting championship in rest of the year. So now it's coming to a point where this is Kimi's sixth win. And I think there was a 25-point difference maybe going into this. And now obviously with George DNF and Kimi winning, that's 50, kind of points that you've got to the nearest person. And the nearest person ends up being Lewis now, just slightly from that. So he kind of, hit George, and then he moved up into the second place in the championship. But, Lewis finished, I think in this race, he finished fourth. So not even getting on the podium, and therefore not really, helping to close that gap, even if he was coming in to challenge. So yeah, I feel the same. I do like Kimi, and obviously he's doing so well, as in his second year. We've said all these things, but we want to see a bit of, something a bit interesting with this championship and a bit of a mix up. So Yeah, I also felt for George, and we've also been a bit harsh with George. He's somebody who's so easily becomes a meme, or you can not
Yeah.
like hate on him, but just roll your eyes at George. But yeah, I genuinely do hope he can get back in it, and we don't see Kimi sort of running away with it. But the other thing with that incident was Lewis got a 5-second penalty for it, which was interesting because commentators thought it was a racing incident. George himself in the not post race, actually, just during the race interview.
During race, yeah.
Exactly. It was lap 5 or something, and they were interviewing him. He also said he didn't really focus on the Lewis thing too much. He said, I think it was a racing incident. He was more concerned about the fact that he had gotten into that position. So he had lost pace with the car and had been lapped by a few people. And he was more talking about the fact that he was even in that position for that to happen, because he should have been further ahead. So you could just see how heartbroken he was in that interview, and just kind of like a loss for words.
Yeah, and watching that replay, he was seriously struggling. Like, did 3 cars get past him? And that's just not something we're used to seeing, the Mercedes getting past so easily. It was on a very quick part of the track, but yeah, it was something about like the straight line speed, and then it was just gone. Yeah, it was just so disappointing. I hope he bounces back in Hungary, so that something happens. I want a different result in Hungary. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, agreed. So that was your P3 and my P3, exactly the same.
In sync.
What was your P2?
My P2 I was hoping was going to turn into a P1, but that's okay. I really wanted Charles to get a back-to-back win, and it was kind of looking pretty good. I probably jinxed it a little bit too early. I think I probably messaged you around lap 15 or something. It was not a back-to-back Charles win, but he ended up on the podium. He finished P2. Happy about that. He looked like he was having a good race, and he held off Kimi for a while, but then as soon as Kimi was passed, and that was it. That was the end of the story. Yeah, it was just that I was hoping for more from him. I think a common theme with my podium is that it wasn't quite what I was hoping for. Yeah, but he had a good race. I think Charles looked like the stronger of the 2 Ferraris. And while watching, it also just made me think about sort of the teammate dynamics that are happening at the moment. I think Oscar looked like the stronger McLaren out of the 2 of them, and VCARB was interesting to watch because Liam and Lindblad, very similar. They've been very close in other races, but Arvid had an upgraded VCARB, so he had an advantage over Liam. So they were the only ones that were equal, that ended up quite different in their placings. But I think between the Ferraris, Charles looked pretty strong. So it was just disappointing again that he didn't end up on the top step, because that would have been quite cool. But a good race. Like, and at the start of the season, we didn't think they were going to do much. So it was good, but it could have been better.
Yeah, I agree, and I won't touch too much on it because it features in my podium too. But yeah, I mean, we've been. I think we chatted about Charles maybe like 2 races ago. We were just reflecting on the fact that he was having a really tough time, and we'd seen him in Monaco, from the podium to the wall, and he just looked so unhappy. And I think maybe he reached some sort of breaking point with Ferrari and the car and the setup and all of that. And since then, he's been able to find this, whatever he's done with his car, with the setup, or whatever he's unlocked. He's like unlocked something where he seems like way more comfortable in the car. Yeah. And because of that, we saw Lewis having some good results in the Ferrari while Charles was not. So it was almost like one or the other. And now Charles has like unlocked that, and you can see that it feels like he's getting there. So yeah, I was also disappointed that we didn't see another Charles win.
It would have just been a good story, wouldn't it? Because it would have been kind of a plot twist of the season, that it was just, all of a sudden Charles is winning, getting a big load of points. But
exactly. Yeah, it would be really interesting, going back to our P3, if Lewis had taken Kimi out, actually. If it had been a different Mercedes that had ended up, and that's what would have happened.
And we kind of need something like that to happen to change the dynamic of the race in a big way. Because as soon as George crashed out, then it's like, okay, well, there's a spot in the points guaranteed for someone else, because otherwise the Mercedes are a pretty solid bet that they'll end up in the points somewhere.
Yeah.
So it does open the race up for the rest of the field. But yeah, we need some changes to happen on the other side of the garage. But yeah, their team meetings must be interesting.
For sure. So my P2 was about the Red Bulls. So it was sort of like Red Bull teamwork. I thought we saw a bit this race where I know, obviously watching qualifying, we saw Hadjar giving Max the tow, like, you know, helping him out to get a good quali result, which he did do, because Max ended up front row behind Kimi in P2. And he did, you know, thank Hadjar for doing that. And the reason Hadjar did that is he was going to start right at the back anyway for the race. So there was, you know, he might as well play the team game in that, and he did. But then during the race, you know, Hadjar started P21. He was like right at the back of the grid or near the back, but he ended up in P6, you know, at the end of the race. So it's amazing sort of comeback for him to go from the back, you know, to the front of the grid. And he just seems like he's doing well. So Max finished P3 on the podium and Hadjar's P6, and I think they were chatting to Laurent like at the end, you know, post race, and he was just saying how Hadjar's doing really well, and it's so good to see both the Red Bulls in the points, right? And I think we mentioned this last race also at Silverstone, like just, you know, that we're seeing both of them, and he's doing better. So yeah, very early on in the season, we spoke about whether Hadjar maybe regretted taking the second-seeded Red Bull, but I think he is getting into the groove of it and working well as a teammate with Max.
Yeah, he's probably making the second seat his own, which is quite a significant thing. He's also been given the opportunity to, like lots of people, we saw it with Liam, we saw it with Pierre and Alex, like they don't get long in the seat. Same with Yuki and Checo, really. But Isack is doing a good job, and surely it would work in his favour to do these team order, teamwork heavy things, because it reflects well on him. And like this worked out beautifully, didn't it? That he wasn't going to start any higher than he did, so he did what he could, and it worked out really well. And that's what teammate pairings should do. So yeah, it's nice to see him doing well, and I'm a Red Bull fan. I like seeing them do well. So yeah, if he can boost Max up, then I'm for that. It was good to see.
What was your P1?
Links to that. My P1 was that Max was on the podium, and again, like with Charles, very happy about that. I'm happy Max is on the podium. But for a while there, I thought he was going to win, and that obviously didn't happen. He finished P3, but he had a really good start. The race start, lap 1 was chaos because George went off, but Max had a really good start. We saw the new race leader graphic pop up, Max Verstappen. Whew, yay, this is going to be a good one. Didn't last that long, but it was a good start. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for that reason, the beginning of the race. So yeah, I guess they just don't have the car in terms of competitiveness with Mercedes, but Max is still like the best, so it's cool seeing him in the situations up the front where he can continue to show that. It's a very long race, it's a very long lap as well, so I think we saw lots of weaknesses from the designs of the cars that Mercedes has the edge over, I guess. Yeah, but I'm happy for Max that he finished on the podium. It's also quite a nice one because it's a half home race for him. So I always like when things like that happen. Yeah, I was happy, and I think Isack played a big part in that because qualifying was very well done by Red Bull. Yeah, it was a good race for Max. He was still stuck in and battling and things, so it was entertaining in that regard. But yeah, I would like to see him win one. So I hope that day is coming soon. Maybe the Dutch Grand Prix would be very cool that he wins his home race again.
Yeah, I agree. It's also, I think, interesting to just have different teams on the podium, because again, of like this sort of Mercedes, I think right at the beginning we spoke about this Mercedes dominance for ball fans, all the chat that was going on because of how strong they were. So it is nice, to have a Red Bull, to have a McLaren, to have a Ferrari, to have other cars in the mix, and getting those podium spots. So yeah, let's see if Max didn't get a win this season. That would be his first time, in a very, very,
like
very, very long time. Well, I'm just saying, because it's been a while. Obviously, it's great that he's now, getting podium, getting back on the podium.
Yes.
But yeah, from those sort of top drivers, we haven't seen him with a win yet this season. But obviously not the McLarens either. So we'll see how we go. But getting closer. I did think it was funny during the qualifying interview where Kimi was obviously on pole, and it was Max and Lando in second and third, and the commentators, the interviewer said something like, "Oh, you've got 2 half Belgians there," and he was like, "What? Are you half Belgian?"
Yeah.
He didn't realize that both Max and Lando were half Belgians, so that was
that was quite
funny.
cute. It also shows that he's quite unfazed about who he's racing against, because like if I was Kimi's age watching Formula One growing up, I mean, he would know who Max is, but maybe he wasn't a super fan, that he hasn't looked into these drivers very much. Like how Hadjar is a huge Lewis fan. Like, I'm sure he knows everything there is to know about Lewis Hamilton. Kimi did not give that vibe at all, that he cared who else was on the grid with him. And I guess they don't chit-chat about their personal lives that much if they're not actually close with one another. But yeah, that was so funny. And for it to be on TV and so obvious as well, it wasn't like in the background like, oh my God, are you half Belgian? Like, it was just straight away bulldoze the interview and get the answer in the way. Yeah, that was quite funny.
Okay, so your P1 kind of related to my P2, and your P2 relates to my P1. So my P1 was just Charles is back on form. So not back on the top again, but still, like on the podium, close enough, back to back. That's what he needs. He needs a bit of momentum on his side, and just to remember that he can, get up onto, first of all, win, and then get on the podium. He ended up in P2 in this race. But I thought the interesting thing was that, we did ask whether he could turn it around. And after we did that episode where we said, can he turn it around and all of that, he did. He really has. But he looked like he could win this race, like to your point. He was in the lead, like towards towards the end, or I think with 10 laps to go, he was still there. But obviously Kimi was gaining on him and then ended up passing him towards the end. But even then, he didn't let Kimi completely get away from him. So that's what also surprised me. He was still able to keep the gap sort of 1 to 2 seconds and try, even in the ending stages, with his tires or whatever engine the way it was, he was able to still keep up a little bit, to try and maybe put the pressure on or keep fighting for it, or was trying to. So I think all of that is quite promising, and I don't think that Ferrari thought they would be fighting for that like first or second, well, the first place initially at the start of that weekend and with the results and everything. So yeah, I just thought that was really good with Charles. And then I was also thinking about just what does this mean also for the Charles Lewis dynamic as you go into the season. Yeah, and then the other thing with that is, when both drivers are kind of getting podiums or it's alternating and doing well, is you don't, for example, not like Max in a team where in a way all the points are going to go to Max, if they're podium or wins or whatever. So you know that he's going to be like the championship contender and everything's going towards him. Whereas now when you've got Lewis and Charles and it's split, I was also just thinking, if like Lewis, it could have been whoever it was, but in this case, I was just saying it's Lewis, right? So if Lewis had won in Silverstone and he had gotten this P2 that Charles had gotten, and it wasn't split between them, he'd really be taking the fight to Kimi. but it gets split between the two drivers. Obviously, I know they're not going to make a decision, or they could, but I don't think they do it, because we saw this play out with McLaren also last year, where it's split between Lando and Oscar, and so that meant that, for example, Max could come into the fight because all the points were going for him. But if it goes Lando Oscar, just splits it with drivers. So yeah, I was just curious. I thought a lot about the maths, like the maths of this championship, when you have two good drivers who it alternates with how they do.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. I don't think Ferrari are enough of a threat to put all their money on one or the other. Unfortunately for Charles, I feel like they'd probably lean the way of Lewis, although I think Charles is doing better than Lewis. But in terms of like optics and things, I think they would rather promote Lewis as the championship contender, and he's obviously got more points at the moment. Yeah, I hope that doesn't happen, although I want someone to fight Kimi in terms of points. I don't want it to be like a political thing of like, well, all the points of this one is going to be given to the, I want it to be a genuine fight, and that may not happen this season at all. Maybe next season, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm sure Ferrari are thinking about it, but I don't know if they're quite there to act on it yet, but they could definitely be having conversations. I'm sure people in Lewis and Charles' camps would be, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
Interesting to see, but obviously that was not what McLaren did last year, and that's why they got a lot of people saying, "Well, why aren't you backing like Lando?" Or especially when Max was getting closer, or even the year before when Lando was the second contender to Max, but they still allowed them both to go for it. So yeah, I don't know if they ever would, but it's just interesting when your two drivers are kind of well matched with a good car versus having one driver that's very clearly the number one driver. And
Charles and Lewis are very competitive when they're racing as well, each other. They're quite aggressive, maybe a little too aggressive sometimes, but
I do think so. But actually Charles was also in a little bit of an incident with Oscar, with Piastri in that. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, he was. I had this noted down.
And I thought, the commentators also thought that like Charles would get the penalty, but like Lewis wouldn't, because one was like an incident and the other didn't seem right. But it went the other way, so he was fine, like no penalty or anything. But then Lewis got it, so that was interesting.
Yeah, I thought the carbon fiber came off Lewis's car when I first saw it live, and then on the replay I was like, oh, it was Charles. It was giving Lewis to me. I thought it was a Lewis move on Oscar, not Charles doing something. All I saw was a Ferrari and then carbon fiber. I was like, "Whoa, what happened?" That was interesting because it was kind of random. Like I didn't realize they were battling each other so hard, and then all of a sudden that's what was on screen. An interesting.
And then
one.
Actually, I remembered now in the cool down room, it was really like small, but actually when that came up, Charles like looked at it and he was like, you could just see his face going like that, and then Max said to him, and then Max was like, "That was calculated," and Max said calculated, and Charles just like looked. He obviously didn't comment on that, but it was just interesting the reaction to that one.
Yeah.
So that was our podium, which I think was pretty much in sync.
Pretty in sync
with our P1 to P3. Maybe because there weren't that many major things happening in the race, so we both had very similar things. And the only other standout I had, which you already mentioned, was I thought Arvid with Lindblad qualified really well, and then was very lucky to hang on to, getting 9th place and a point there. So we were continuing to see that sort of Racing Bulls Alpine battle for the points. But Bortoleto did well. So he did. He did very well this
I
race.
noticed Audi this race, actually.
It's like, oh,
hello.
It's like, it's like that meme with Angela where it's like, and Dwight, where it's like, oh, you're there. So we
or the polar bear in Texas. That one.
Yeah.
He did well. I think it was his best career finish.
Wow.
P8, I think, yeah. One other point I had from this race was that McLaren looked like they were back in the mix. Just to see Lando and Oscar up there. I think Oscar was more competitive than Lando, but Lando, because of the pit strategies and a few VSCs and things, he was the race leader for however many laps. So it was just nice to see McLaren back up there, lingering up near the top again.
Yeah, it was great. And also Lando qualified really well. You know, he did really well. Obviously, he was going to get that 10-place grid drop, but he put himself really high up in qualifying. So you could see that there was performance in the car. My
meme of the week relates to my P3, and I'm sorry about it, but it's a breaking news meme, and it says it's Jehovah. it's how would you say that? George over, and it's him with the crying face, and sorry, but that made me giggle.
I saw that one, and I just felt for him, because that was kind of how he was in the during race interview, and I felt it's I don't know. Let's see what he can do. So, and who knows what's going to happen in Hungary? And I want to next week when we speak, I'm going to go back and look at last year and how far Oscar was with points at the end, at this halfway point, because we also had someone last season where they pulled away with the points.
Exactly.
But the rest of the second half changed things around a lot. So I'll get that stat, and then we can think about, okay, how far is Kimi compared to where Oscar was? Because Oscar looked like he was running away with it, basically.
And Oscar won Spa last year, didn't he?
I think so.
His race win. Yeah.
He's ahead of
And then after the summer break, then Lando and Max came on the scene. So maybe that will happen, and it'll be George and Lewis or Charles chasing Kimi.
I don't know.
Maybe
we'll definitely see. I'll do my meme, and then we'll go to obviously what's going to happen in Hungary. But my one was this one, which is classic Charles, where he said, nothing. It's just an incident. Way back when he was racing against Max, and somebody asked him about that. But yeah, that's what the commentators, so Martin and Crofty, discussing the Lewis Hamilton Russell crash, was saying the same thing. They think it's an incident. George thought it was an incident, but clearly not what the FIA thought.
No.
Yeah.
Nice. Good memes.
Nice memes. And on to the next race, which is coming up really quickly before we go into the summer break. So it's going to be Hungary. What are you thinking about that?
I love the Hungaroring. I think it's a really cool track. It's one that I would love to get to in person one day. Something I am excited for, and it might be wishful thinking. Aston Martin are bringing upgrades to Hungary, and apparently it's going to be like a whole new car, and they're going to be off. So I would like to see some performance from Alonso. Purely just, upwards of P15 would be nice just to see, so that he has a fun time, because he's just rocking up and putting around at the back and then retiring. Like, it's not fun to watch them do that. So I would like to see something from Aston Martin. Even just Alonso's smile at the end of a race would be nice. But apart from that, at the back of the pack, I would like to see Max win, and I feel like it might happen. Max P1, George P2, Kimi's going to get 4 or 5, and maybe Oscar or Charles would be P3. But I want Max to get a win, and we'll see if that happens.
Interesting. I feel like you've been hoping for a Max win for a while now.
I have.
A couple of races.
I missed the Dutch national anthem.
Exactly. I remember last
Although
year.
I really like the Italian one, and everyone sings, and it's a very nice anthem.
Yeah, I guess what I'm hoping for more from a championship point of view, but I guess also as a fan, is I'd like to see both Ferraris on the podium. Yes. And George. So, because
nice.
in order to bring that fight to Kimi, I think we're going to need to see that mix. So yeah, I'm kind of indifferent at the moment as to whether it's a Charles or Lewis win from a Ferrari
Someone in red.
Someone in red, because I actually like both of them. I'm a huge Lewis fan, but I'm so happy to see Charles just getting back into things. And he's never won a championship, but I think he's really good, and I think he's just lost his way a bit, so it would be good to just also see him performing well. So yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. Do I think it will actually happen? It will actually happen given what we've seen? I'm not sure. But yeah, 2 Ferraris and a George on the podium.
We'd like that to happen, please.
So, yeah, we will see you at the next one.